Codename Kids Next Door, or K&D if you didn't have the time, is for the people, if people meant kids and only kids. It was a visual representation of facing the terrors of being a teenager and an adult with the power of kid ingenuity. Cool gadgets and acronyms were the tools used to beat the adults, and it was fun to see all these different kid worries presented in a fantastical sci-fi-esque way. I'm not sure what kind of values the show is trying to peddle though. It really does seem like the core theme of the show is to stay kid-like forever, because the show makes it seem like being an adult is not only scary as crap, but also really lame. Putting that aside, K&D takes this silly concept and thrives on it. It's why the show is so beloved, as in I'm pretty sure I haven't heard any real negative things about it. And the proof is in the tapioca, or like the voting tapioca. I don't know how many people know, but this show became a series because it was part of a contest on Cartoon Network called The Big Pick 2, where they showed a bunch of pilots and people voted on which one they wanted to become a full series, which is just cruel. Imagine being the creator who made the pilot with the least amount of votes. And that's how you start rethinking all of your life choices. Anyway, K&D's pilot won, and we're all better for it as it became a truly iconic show that has stood the test of time. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for some of its advertisements. If you were brainlit, you were only advertising your show with commercials and nothing else because you clearly wanted to fail. Meanwhile, big brain intellectuals use different medias to advertise their medias, such as making shows to push toys, making movies to push toys, and making games to push toys. Toys are the purest form of capitalism, I guess. Anyway, the K&D marketing team decided to make an MMO-style game called Operation Best as a form of promotion. The concept of Best was that you would go through a level based on the episode that just aired, and if you got the high score, you would get to see your created operative and name on TV. Oh, in your state for some reason? So you would go through the levels over and over to grind points so you could be at the top of the leaderboards for the week, and that was about it. Funnily enough, it's referred to as an MMO, but the only multiplayer part of it was the high score stuff and the fact that it was always online. This promotion game lasted 8 episodes, and after that the servers were shut down and you weren't able to play the game anymore. Until this year, when one of the developers decided to look back at it and make an offline version, saying, "I've recently discovered the source code for the game in my archives and decided to try and get it running again without any of the online server code." And he did it. It was not only free, but also offline only, as I said before, meaning that you could finally play it again, which I did. And it's something. The best place to start with this game is the gameplay, because there's not a lot to it, so I could talk about it pretty quickly. You click to move and you click to shoot. That's the core gameplay. Sure, you can press space to go into stealth mode, but I guarantee you that you won't be using that past the tutorial level. The game isn't that hard unless you were using a trackpad for some reason. Maybe it's your mom's laptop and she doesn't need a mouse because browsing the internet in bed is her God-given right and it doesn't need to be tainted by the presence of a mouse. Also, I kinda lied. The game is a little hard because half of the time you will miss the enemy's hitboxes way too many times and take a lot of dumb damage, but more on that later. Now, there are a few ways to mitigate the difficulty in the game. The first one being the use of skill points to upgrade yourself. You earn skill points for every 100 points you get, which is really easy to get, but don't worry, upgrading skills takes a lot of points because they don't want it to be a cakewalk on the path to being the best agent. See, the cost of upgrading a skill is whatever the level the skill is currently at. So if your toughness was 22, it would take 22 points to reach 23. And trust me, it starts to add up. By the time I beat all of the missions, I only had one skill at 25 and another just shy of 20. There are only 4 skills in the game: speed, accuracy, stealth, and toughness. Speed makes you move faster, and that should be priority numero uno. Like, at base speed, you'll be moving at the speed of a certain blue hedgehog if both of his legs were broken, and that still might be too fast. All the enemies are faster than you, and trying to get to another area will take about an hour or so. Just put points into speed. It's basically a requirement. Accuracy is good? It doesn't really say, and I'm not entirely sure, but it either increases your damage or increases your chance to crit. Though I'm leaning towards the former because adding in crit chances might be too much work. I would get some points in it just so you're not doing negative damage to the bosses. Finally, we have toughness, which you should put points into if you like not getting one-shotted by the basic mobs. And I know I didn't mention stealth, and that's because you should just throw stealth in the trash because any point put into stealth is a wasted point. The second mitigation technique is by picking up power-ups. There are power-ups for each of the stats, but the only ones that literally matter are the ones that give you rapid fire and hyper speed, which sounds like a good time. And that's all there really is in terms of the gameplay. There's some things I haven't mentioned, and I'll get to that, but now it's time to talk about the story. And the best way to do that is to break it down mission by mission. A quick note about all 8 of our missions. They share the same name as the episode they're based on. Now, I don't have to say that every single time. First up, we have the tutorial mission, which is based on the aptly named Operation Training, which involve new recruits that we'll barely see throughout the show become agents, so it's pretty perfect as the basis for our mission. There's not much to say about this one since I already talked about the gameplay, but there are 3 essential things you'll learn. 1. How slow the inventory comes up, and trust me, you'll be using it a lot throughout the game. 2. How weird the proportions are. Things will look really huge compared to you, and I suspect this is to pad out the length as you try and navigate the hitboxes. And 3. How truly trash the stealth is, which just reinforces what I said earlier. Alright, the second mission is Operation Uncool, which is basically House of the Dead but with nerds. In the episode, the nerds become enraged because their Yipper card was stolen and they know no better way to vent their frustrations than to force people to watch garbage reruns of garbage television shows. And that's the basic premise of the mission as well, except with too many fetch quests to deal with. And just like in the episode, you still need to find the Yipper card so that you can stop the zombie nerds, but you need to get a different card to trade with, and to get that card you need to collect some apples first? And this exposes something annoying about the game. Enemies can and will hide behind things such as trees, and you won't know they're there until you lose like half of your life since there's no other way to see them. Well, that's if you're a soft brain and don't know the true, actual way to use stealth. See, if you go into stealth, you'll see the detection lines of all enemies in the area, making it a breeze to discover the opposition's hiding spots. That is if you aren't playing with one hand like I was. Anyway, after getting the apples, you get to go to the arcade, but the only game operational is some game where you shoot ships coming at you, but they only come 2 at a time? To progress, you have to beat some kid's high score, which should be so little trouble that even our friendly trackpad users can get past it. In fact, I crushed that little punk's high score, but that was mostly because I was bored. Anyway, while he reflects on the fact that he's absolutely terrible at space shooting game, you go to face down the giant nerd, Yipper card in hand. Get a good look because this is one of the 3 types of bosses in the game, as in he just runs at you while you endlessly kite him. I hate fighting these types because half of the time they'll get stuck on some jank hitboxes or run back to their spawn if you're far enough away from them. Anyway, you give him back his card after you beat him like he owed you candy, and he tells you that Faceless Kid 752 stole the card and that you should go teach him a lesson. He just runs around and shoots projectiles at you, which is actually the second type of boss in this game. After you finish him off, you get booted back to your room since there's no windscreen or anything like that. Just a quick good job to the tune of you racking up a bunch of points. Next up, we have Operation Hospital, which is a trendsetter as it introduces the particularly annoying thing the game likes to do. Show an enemy that you can't hit with your weapon and then forcing you to find something to hit it with. This means that for the first half of the level, you're going to be avoiding the enemies indefinitely. Here, Robo Bradley initiated Code Brown on the treehouse and you have to open up the vents to get all that stink out. You have to find a crowbar and then the vents, which will take anywhere from a minute to an hour because you end up aimlessly wandering around these huge rooms. This is only made worse by how slow you move, made even worse by the animations which look straight out of backyard soccer. After fading the room, you capture Bradley and fix him up with a minigame that's simple enough. From this though, you find out that Bradley was affected by a virus that was made by Creed to infect computers all around the world, I guess? And she's posted up at the hospital for some reason? I wasn't fully paying attention. I think it's because of what happened in the actual episode. From here, you just trudge through abhorrent frame rates to beat up Cree and the mission's over. Now we have Operation Hound, and this is a mission where you desperately need speed, or dare I say stealth, but stealth is garbo, so just speed. Once again, you have enemies that you can't hurt until later in the game, and you have to get past them. The thing is that these homework-eating beasts are big and fast and big. They will run you down and will kill you pretty easily, so you have to know where to go so you can get to the checkpoint before you lose all your health. The only thing is that no one really gives you any directions and you have no map, so you just have to figure it out, but the school is like to the south of you? At the school, you need to get bad homework from the janitor's closet, but I'm not sure why we can't just ask number 4 since his brain is made of bricks. You have to do a dumb timing minigame and then you get the homework. Now you can damage the warehouse, which means you need to go beat up number 5 to turn her back to normal, which only makes sense in the mind of a child, I think. After that, you escort number 5 out of the woods and fight some coach guy, and you're done. Well, that would be the case if it wasn't for the fact that I actually couldn't shoot any of the beasts on my first run through of the mission for some probably dumb reason. With Operation Flush, we have the Resident Boss Rush mission that had me thinking that I did something wrong for more than one reason. Firstly, there's this chase sequence that I failed, but it lasted like 5 seconds, so I wasn't even really sure I was supposed to be there. Then in the fight with the Toiletator, I triggered him early and he chased me back to the start only to run through the trees to get to a new spawn point. There he actually had some dialogue and then the fight started over? When I went to go beat on the old cat lady, I wasn't able to shoot her cages half the time, but maybe I was just missing the hitbox? I don't really remember Night Brace's part, but I'm sure there was something wrong. Oh wait, I remember now. His fight boiled down to trapping him and turning on a switch, but if you're still rocking base speed for some godforsaken reason, you might not be able to get to it on time. And when I fought Mr. Boss, he didn't move from his spot, and I was able to beat him without getting shot at. Past all these problems, we get the third and final type of boss fight, which just recycles the minigame from the Uncool mission. Here you shoot the missiles that Mr. Wink and Mr. Fib fire until they run out of ammo, and at that point their mech falls apart for some reason. I guess the foundation of the mech was held together by the missiles, which is shoddy workmanship at best and gross negligence at worst. Now time to get into the mission. No, wait, I guess I talked about everything in the mission. Operation Clues is dumb and has hands down the worst section in the entire game. It's an escort mission where number 3, the person you're escorting dies way too quickly and you don't deal damage nearly fast enough to the enemies. You have to figure out where she's going after trial and error, and after that, you have to go way ahead to fight any enemies that could pose even a semblance of a threat. You have to do this twice, which is just doubly annoying. But actually, if you kill them, they just don't respawn, so after a certain point, you'll just be having a nice walk around the neighborhood. But what are you escorting her to, you might be wondering? Well, you're finding her stolen rainbow monkeys, one of which contains a chip that holds the K&D launch codes, or something like that. Short story made shorter, you find them all and get attacked by the delightful children from down the lane, which is the same boss as the Mr. Wink and Mr. Fib one. And I don't really know what else to say here other than I really hate the start of this mission. Operation Macaroni is the laziest mission out of all of them because it's basically the Robo Bradley mission but easier, since you know where everything is and all you have to do is beat a bunch of enemies. The only thing of note in this mission is how the minigame is my second favorite out of all the ones in the game, mainly because it's quicker than the ones in the Hound mission and it's a little more skill based. But that's honestly all there is to say other than I really don't like number 13, both in this mission and in the episode he was in. Screw him. If Operation Macaroni was the laziest mission, Operation Pool seemed to have the most work put into it. It felt like a culmination of everything you've done and the devs seemed to know this would be the last mission in Operation Best. In this one, you have to head to the negative zone in order to stop -4 from taking over our world because -4 doesn't have bricks for brains. You have to destroy his generators, which are situated around town, one being in the arcade, one at the school, and one back at the treehouse. The minigame you do to deactivate the arcade generator is my favorite one in the game because it makes me feel like I'm not a brain space let for a few seconds in my life. It's just a sliding puzzle and it's really easy when you figure out how to do it, but still. The arcade is whatever, but the school is the hardest section for me, and it's because of the turrets. The hitbox is atrocious and even at 19 speed, you can't run through some of them. Add in the amount of enemies running at you and you'll die a good amount. When you get to the treehouse, you'll have to do another boss rush fighting -1, 2, 3, and 5. After you bring them down, and I'm talking all the way back up to Positive Town, you get the hardest boss in the game. And by that, I mean they throw -4 at you along with a bunch of minions who kill you pretty easily. And when you die, you just spawn back on them, so you just have to get some hits in before you go down. Eventually, you'll beat him, and congratulations, you beat the whole game, and even the game treats it like that. So, yeah, woo, you're finally done. So here are some closing thoughts. This isn't that great of a game. It feels like one of those browser games from back in the mid-2000s. Weird unintended things happen and it's not really meant to run on modern hardware. With all that said, it was a real nostalgia trip that made me want to go back and watch the shows, which in a way is what the whole purpose of the game was anyway. So you should check it out just for that because hey, it's free and it only took me like 3 hours to beat, so why not? I'll post a link in the description if you want to play it, and while you're down there, make sure you like and subscribe. But for now, have a good day.